I'm Chris from Redmen TV. Do us a favour, do yourself a favour, and subscribe to the Liverpool Connection Podcast. Do it. Do it now.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Liverpool Connection Podcast. This is the story episodes where we bring on guests to tell their Liverpool stories and talk about their time at Liverpool and all that good stuff. Today we got a former Liverpool and England international player who wrote his autobiography 2015. Wouldn't it be good? He's also worked in media, and we're going to talk about lots of stuff. His time at Liverpool, his media work, and also the mental health side of things. But the Liverpool Connection Podcast welcomes Paul Walsh.
Yeah, hi guys, how you doing?
We're good, mate. We're good. So happy to finally get you on. I know we've been going a bit back and forth in the past couple of weeks, but you're here now. So we're going to crack on. Just before you joined Liverpool, I mean, you got 83-84 young player of PFA's Young Player of the Season. So, I mean, you were already rated highly before you came to Liverpool, and you played for Luton. And, you know, all the big wigs were after you, Liverpool, Man United, as per usual. Why did you decide on Liverpool?
It was a no-brainer, really. I mean, Liverpool were the top team. I'd grown up watching Liverpool in Europe because Liverpool were the main team in Europe most of the time. You know, Aston Villa had a couple of seasons where they, had a little spell in the sunshine of European football. At the end of my second season at Luton, I already had my 5 full England caps. And as you say, I was PFA Young Player of the Year. I think it was the same night Ian Rush won Player of the Year. Things were going well. And, I was aware that there was some interest from Liverpool. When I played at Anfield, I'd done well. Even we lost 6-0 in one game, and Ian Rush scored 5. And I remember coming off the pitch, and Ian Rush went to me, "You was the best player." It sounds ridiculous because he just scored 5. But I think the thing that happened was that day is I kept going even when we were losing by quite a large number of goals, and still managed to put in a decent shift whilst getting battered. And it was a great experience playing at Anfield on those couple of occasions. The first occasion was quite early on in my debut season, and we drew 3 each. And again, I think there was a moment in that game where I turned Mark Lawrenson, and I got the attention of maybe some of the maybe Joe Fagan and 1 or 2 of the players as well. And once I knew that Liverpool were interested, I mean, I could have went to Italy, not to a big side in Italy. Italy was the place to be at that time as well. It was above English football. But, the club that they were talking about wasn't anything fantastic. So, I mean, it was a total no-brainer, like I said. But so making that decision was easy. Joe Fagan gave me a bit of a problem early on, which led to a massive mistake I made. I remember meeting Peter Robinson, Sir John Smith, the chairman, and Joe Fagan in London at a London hotel, Heathrow Airport. And whilst we was there, Joe said to me, although I hadn't signed at that moment, they'd come there to find out if I was happy to come. It's a bit of a mad meeting in a way. But then I went up to Anfield and I was sat in Joe's office, and he said, "We'd like you to come to the European Cup final." And I was so tempted by that and so wanted to go. And because I had 5 full England caps, I thought I was more full England than England under 21. But we had the final of the under 21s, and I played in all the games and was top scorer. And because Joe had given me the dilemma of going into Rome with them, and you got to remember it's 1984. There weren't even mobile phones. Communicating was a bit harder. So I spoke to David Pleat, and he said to me, "I'm not sure that's a good idea," but I didn't hear any more. So he phoned Bobby Robson, and Bobby Robson, and told Bobby Robson that I wanted to go with Liverpool to the European Cup final and not play in the under-21 final. And the next day when I went to buy a newspaper, this is how you found out. The back page headline was "Bobby boots out Walsh if he can't, make an England under-21 final. He's not for us." And it's not like you just get on the phone and sort it out, because it just wasn't like that then. And I thought, do you know what? I'm joining Liverpool Football Club. I'll get back in the England team. And I just didn't. For a lot of reasons, really. I'd pissed Bobby off, but even moving forward as we go, the first season, Joe Fagan made me feel 10 feet tall, because he wanted me in the team. He wanted me in the team with Rush and Dalglish, not Kenny or me. There was always going to be Ian Rush, and then it was, I think a lot of people thought I was being bought as a long-term replacement for Kenny, but Joe wanted me in the team. And I started the season, against my first home game was against West Ham, and my dad was a West Ham season ticket holder. And I remember we beat them 3-0, but I scored in 14 seconds. That's and it was one of the most exhilarating moments of my life. And I nearly jumped over the stand. I was that, it was that ecstatic, that moment. And, but the only reason I was probably playing was because Ian Rush had a cartilage at the time. And moving forward a couple of months, I've now got a cartilage, but the problem we had at Liverpool is no one knew what they were doing on the medical side. It was pretty poor. So I remember rubbing my knee in training one day, and I kept feeling something pop. So when I stopped, my body weight going forward, I could feel this like pop in my knee. So we're going to play Tottenham away from home. And I remember Joe saying when I was rubbing my knee, he went, "Look, he thinks he's rushy, he thinks he's got a cartilage." So it made it even harder to say I've got a problem with my knee. And I just got my head down and thought, right, it's one of them, you just got to keep going. And so we went to Tottenham, and then after, I can't remember how long it was, I think about half an hour, my knee's locked. Because now it's not training, there's that extra 10% going into what you're doing, maybe that little bit of extra exertion and reaction. And my knee's locked. So Ronnie used to run on, because Ronnie used to run on because he was younger, fitter and faster than Ronnie. And Ronnie did the treatment because Roy ran on. That's how mad it was. And, but at least in this case, I got sent straight to the surgeon, and he said, you need an operation. So I had my operation. I was out a couple of months. And then as soon as I got fit again, I was on the bench for a bit, but Joe was looking to get me into the team. And I loved that. So even moseying towards the last couple of months of the 85, we're struggling in the league a bit. We've lost in the semi-final of the League Cup to a double own goal, 2 own goals in that against QPR in the semi-final. But we've made it to the European Cup final, and we look like we're not going to make it in the league. And leading up to that final, all Joe was bothered about was, don't worry. By this point, I had a hernia. They didn't know it was a hernia because they didn't know what they were doing, but I had a hernia. And so I'm playing with a hernia, and it's one of those, as long as you're bumbling into the end of the season, you can get through games, but you don't train. So again, Joe made me feel 10 feet tall. Don't worry about training, just be ready for the games, because at the end of the season you're fit anyway. You don't train as much anyway. So that's how it was. And then I remember turning up at the Haysel. I remember looking at the ground, feeling disappointed with where the game was being played.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been to Rome the year before. I'd been to many a better state. Every stadium in the first division, as it was then, was better. Not maybe every, but most of them were better than what we were about to play in. 37,000, rambling, ramshackle, bit of a dump. And it was disappointing. And, well, that was the least of my worries that night. It was going to get even more disappointing, as we all know. And I won't go into the details of, well, I don't know, I could do. But staying around the injury situation, just before half time, I stretched for a ball and my stomach tore. And that was me done. The game was sort of played in a surreal atmosphere because, again, back to the communication bit we're talking about. Now, there wasn't social media, there wasn't mobile phones, there wasn't the communication where it would have, it goes round the place in 5 minutes now. No one knew what had gone on. So I think they made the decision to play the game because the whole stadium wouldn't have understood what was going on. And, and we lost to a dubious penalty, Michel Platini. I come off at half time, didn't play. The whole occasion was fucked, is the only word I can use. And it was a proper shit show of a night. And, that was massively disappointing, but more so than anything, the tragic 39 lives that were lost. And what I also found disappointing after was the UEFA, trying to find a problem with Liverpool, without absolving themselves of all responsibility. They decided where the game was played. It wasn't fit for purpose. And then they looked to blame everybody else. That was disappointing.
Well, they haven't really changed that, have they,
Yeah,
Paul?
they haven't changed anything, have they?
No, but there's an element of some of it that goes before the fans. They've cultivated some of that. English football cultivated that reputation, not just Liverpool fans.
Mm-hmm.
And like with any group of fans, there's always a few dodgy ones in any pack of supporters. But this was nothing to do with that. This is purely about about a stadium that wasn't fit for the game. And then trying to blame Liverpool fans and English hooliganism because it was easy to just blame it on that and absolve themselves. But anyway, with all of the English teams paid a price, mainly Everton, because they won the title that season and didn't get a chance to play in the European Cup the following year. And then my life was just about to change a little bit off the back of this game, because the girlfriend that I was with at the time, her dad was the Luton club doctor. So no one at Liverpool had a clue what was wrong with me. The surgeon wanted to operate on my abductor muscle. So I went home in the summer and my old doc, he said, lay on the settee, he said, lift your right leg up, and he put some pressure on it. He went, okay. And then I did the same on left, and that's it out. I went, oh. He went, you've got a hernia. He said, I can sort that out for you straight away. So he arranged my operation and I went and got it done. I didn't really trust Liverpool as far as I could throw them in a medical sense. It was amateur. It just really was. They had this winning hard mentality, which was great. But, if players today were confronted with that, they wouldn't, they'd laugh. Mm-hmm. And Kenny, who'd just been announced manager, which was a bit of a shock to football in general, I think it was at the time. Great player, so, but my first argument with Kenny was about why I'd got my own operation. And then I phoned him a week or so later, and there was a bit in a newspaper about me going to Aston Villa. So I phoned him up. I said, what's this about a newspaper of Aston Villa? Typical Kenny. Why do you want to go? I went, no. He went, well, don't worry about it then. But, the way that Kenny used to be a bit smart at times. I now am going to, because I've had the operation, I'm going to miss a pre-season. So I missed pre-season and I'm out for a few months and then I start slowly coming back. And I went to a game away at Oxford, one of my early games back, and I'm on the bench, and Ronnie Whelan, I think we was losing 1-0. Ronnie Whelan got a really badly gashed forehead and had to come off. And in them days, there was only one sub. That was me. So when I go, and it was about 20 minutes to half time, and we come in, and obviously Kenny's not happy. But the first person he launched into was me. And I thought, I've only been on the pitch 20 minutes. I hadn't particularly done anything right. I hadn't particularly done anything wrong. The team was generally struggling for some reason on this day. And so I took umbrage to him digging me out. And if I had a flaw, and I've got several, it was my anger. And I ripped back at him and called him all the Scottish. I won't spoil your program with profanities, but my head had gone. I thought that was the end of it. It probably didn't do me any good in the long run, because Kenny was 34. There was only me and Ian Rush. Anyway, I got back in the team, and I went on an amazing run in 85, 86, and was loving my football, was loving it more than I could ever tell you. Playing in front of the Kop, scoring goals, winning games, top of the league. I was loving it. I can't tell you how much I was loving it. And, it was about March time, and I think we're playing Man United at home. And I've gone up for a challenge with Kevin Moran, and as his legs crossed, I ripped my ankle round. Roy ran on with his bag with a sponge and a spray in it. And he slapped the sponge on, and then he slapped the spray on. And then he then went on to whirl my ankle around in circles as though it was stiff for some reason. This started a 7-month period that really ended my Liverpool career, as far as I'm concerned. Because, hang on, I just need a swig of coffee. Because not only did I miss the end of the season, the best bit where you pick the cup up, but I'm going to miss the FA Cup final, and I'm devastated, because as a kid, if you grew up in the 60s and 70s, you grew up loving the FA Cup more than anything. And I was no different. So playing an FA Cup final that now I wasn't going to play in. And I, Kenny did some things that, I looking back, I can possibly understand why, but I've never received any apology for what he did. He asked me if I could play in a game 6 weeks after I was injured. The main swelling and the pain had gone, but it was broke my ankle, but they don't know this yet, because the surgeon has done an X-ray. I didn't really do loads of scans then, and he said, you should be all right, just leave it and it'll slowly repair itself. And I remember he asked me to play at Sheffield Wednesday, and I said, Kenny, I can't run properly. Wee man, just give us an hour. I went, Kenny, I can't run. But I genuinely wanted to please Kenny. I genuinely wanted Kenny Dalglish to be a fan of me and want to pick me. So I would have I take the next step, which is I play in the game. And I come off after 20 minutes because I can't run. A total waste of time. But there was an ulterior motive, it turns out, because when you get injured in the first team, you get all the bonuses. And as soon as you've played, you don't get the bonuses anymore. And that was the last bonus I got for the rest of the season. And I really thought that was poor. As though my season wasn't difficult enough anyway, I now had this situation with Kenny. And there was a bit of resentment and anger on my part, without a shadow of a doubt. And, if you look at the picture in the FA Cup, 1986 FA Cup final, there's me, there's Sammy Lee there, there's Gary Gillespie there, and John Walk there. And I look at that, and for some reason, Kenny gave John Walk an FA Cup winners medal, but me, Gary, Sammy never got one. Whereas nowadays, every man and his dog gets a medal. And so, if I felt I ever deserved, or I'd been part of a team where I'd played a significant role, it was that season. I was devastated, if I'm honest. I was really I struggled with what had happened. And then I came back pre-season. So I'm about to miss a second pre-season, because when I start training, I realise I still can't run properly. I've done some running, light running, but as I've stepped it up, I've realised the force going through my ankle just doesn't want to know it. So now they decide to inject my ankle with a dye and X-ray it 4 months after I'd done it. And suddenly it's torn. The capsule is torn in 3 places and I need an operation. And I'm thinking, why didn't we do that on day one? Even Roy said that. To be fair, I can't blame Roy for it. The surgeon, why didn't he do it straight away? Then we would have known what we were dealing with. I'd have got fitter much quicker. Mm-hmm. I might have even had a chance of playing in the final if they'd have did that straight away. Anyway, so now I miss another pre-season. And at this point, we're in the, I think we're in the Screen Sports Super Cup. And we're in the final against Everton, and I go to watch it, and someone's I'm just getting fit now, and someone's injured. No, Mark Lawrenson had a stomach bug, I think. Kenny said, "Wee man, do you want to be on the bench?" Oh, I've hardly played any football in 7 months. Yeah, of course I do, yeah. I was like an excited little kid. Remember, I'm only 22. I'm a little kid. I'm not a little kid, but and so we were winning 5-0 over the 2 legs, and he went, "Go and have a run round for 10 minutes." So I went and had a run round. I'm enjoying it. We're winning. My legs wobbled up as I'm running down. I just was nowhere near fit. And then I've gone up for a challenge. And I've come down. I've landed on my wrist, and it's painful, very painful. So I've come in after the game. I mean, I don't know what your audience is on here, but I went, "Roy," I said, you can edit this out if you don't like what I'm going to say now. I said, I've really hurt my wrist. He went, "Fuck off, you soft bastard." All right. So I went home, couldn't sleep, got up, struggled to get my clothes on. I got them on, but got to training, struggled to get my kit on, and I'm running around like holding my arm. And then he said, "Get yourself up the hospital. Get yourself up the hospital." So, I mean, I've got a picture. I could send it to you of me playing with a plaster. Anyway, I've broken my wrist. So I drive to the hospital, right? But I'm changing gear with my right arm and driving with my right arm because it's my left hand that I broke. And then I come back in plaster to just under my arm, and all the players just laughed at me. And I just had to take it. But deep down, I was furious. I was angry. I was fucking enraged, really. And so 2 weeks later, because I just have to go in the gym now and do as best I can with trying to keep some fitness going until they chop it down to there. 2 weeks later, they chopped it to there, and I went straight in the first team. And I scored a hat-trick in my second game against Norwich, and we win 6-2 or something. And my first 3 games were played on enthusiasm, adrenaline, and things like that. Those emotions, those feelings of just can't. To score a hat-trick. And then, but what happened was I had 2 pre-seasons I hadn't done in 2 years, and I'd hardly played any games in 6 months. I sort of started plodding. 3-4 games in, I'm plodding, and now I've gone, I think, 8 or 9 without a goal. And the crowd are moaning a bit because they don't really know, they don't understand. They think I'm fit, and I ain't really fit, but I'm out on the pitch. And I lost my confidence, started to struggle, and and in them days we only had one sub, so I should have been taken out, put on the bench, but then Kenny didn't want to play, and there was still only me, Rush Dalglish. So I remember sitting there, a bit fed up one day, and I pick up the newspaper, and we've signed Aldo. And I obviously knew we had to sign some players, but I thought that it might still be a fair battle for places, but it never was, because as Kenny bought his players that were his players, suddenly I just moved down the pecking order. That year, because Aldo was cup tied, I played in the League Cup final in '87 against Arsenal, which we lost, where Rush scores for the first time and we don't win. But even that game, I had no form because I wasn't really playing. I was just, Aldo was out. And to be fair, I never thought John Aldridge and Ian Rush would be a good combination. But to be fair, Aldo was a scruffy footballer, but he scored goals. But he wasn't the silkiest on the ball, but he scored goals. but another player eventually fell foul with Kenny in the end. And then the summer comes and Peter Beardsley joins the club, and I sort of know that, you know, I'm the next similar player, you know, smaller type of statue, you know, back to goal, turn, run at people, all that. Peter was very good, and I knew that was it. I sort of knew that was it, and you know, I found it really hard to get my head round. You know, I found it massively, yeah. And you know, what can you do? You know, you have to. I'm going to say, with my old head on, as of today, you have to accept that situation. But I didn't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I was angry. I was always looking for a row, looking for a fight, looking for a fallout, so I could vent my anger on people. And I drank too much. I drank to console myself of not having a regular game, knowing that I wasn't really in the manager's plans, knowing that I would have to leave at some point, and I struggled with that.
Well, I mean, you know, back then, as you've said before, there's a drink culture in football. You know, not just the supporters, but the players as well. And you know, as supporters, I think we really don't understand what players go through when they're injured. You know, that's all they know is playing football. And if they're help, you know, holed up in a bed or the house, what you turn to, you know, drugs, or alcohol. So,
well, you know, I don't suppose I had to turn to that, but I did. It was the only thing, because in my head, I couldn't switch my head off with angry thoughts, feelings towards people that I felt had let me down. You know, the way I was being treated. You know, the Kenny asking me to play at Sheffield Wednesday. You know, and then never getting a bonus again. You know, why would you do that? And so them things, you know, really, really hurt me. And you know, and I didn't really deal with them that well. And you know, so I was either telling someone to fuck off and didn't care, just to make me feel better. And you know, I'd rather fall out with. I used to look at it on the basis that I'm going out on my terms, right? Because now that I know that I'm not getting a game every week, I'll go out and I'll talk to you like I want to talk to you. You know, don't think just because you're telling Kenny Dalglish, I'm not going to tell you to fuck off. You can fuck off, right? Made me feel better. It got me nowhere, absolutely nowhere. You know, I just could not accept the circumstances of how it was happening. And so, you know, I've said many, probably about 2 years ago, I apologised to Kenny over. I apologise on the basis that I'm apologising for my reactions and my part in what happened. Mm-hmm. You know, Kenny's responsible for his own part in it. He probably thinks he didn't do anything, but you know, I can't. I was only doing what I needed to do for me.
Well, it's crazy. Your story about the ultrasound as well. It didn't work. That's mental. You know, for a club of Liverpool, you would think, you know, the medical department would be, you know, A+. You know, reading that, it didn't even work. No,
there was a couple of things really. I mean, I remember early on, I'd had a back spasm. This is pre-season in my first trip. Excuse me. And so the doc must have been 80 odd even then. And he's away with us. We were playing Young Boys of Burn in a pre-season friendly, and I've got a back spasm. So Roy went, see the doc. So I see the doc, and he's like clocking on a fair few years. He's, you know, been, and so I said, doc, my back's killing me. He went, what, in there? And I went, yeah, that's it. He went in his bag and gave me 2 aspirin, and that was it. And again, I think I came off in that game. And you know, the medical was, you know, and the things like that, you know, it's a funny story when you're telling a story, but you know, Ronnie had been giving me treatment for 4 months, and you know, we had a bit of a laugh sometimes, me and Ronnie, because most treatment rooms, they don't want you having papers and drinks. They don't want you being too comfortable. But I had the newspaper and I had a cup of tea or whatever. And Ronnie was doing ultrasound on my ankle, but Ronnie was bored doing ultrasound on my ankle. He's reading the back of the paper, but he's halfway up my shin. He ain't on my ankle. So I've gone, Ron, you do know I've got a bad ankle, not a bad shin, don't you? Fuck up, you little bastard, And it was, and that was it, So that's what it was like. And then the fella comes round, and this must have been in the early days of PAT testing or whatever it is, testing everything that it all works. And he put some stuff on the head of the ultrasound, turned it on, it just sat there. It weren't even. I went, oh my God, oh, what chance have we got? But it was one of them. As long as it weren't you was on the end of it. You weren't. No, everyone just used to laugh at you, So, but really, it weren't funny. But yeah, it's just the way it was, just the way it was. But and then also another me and Sammy Lee also got caught up in a. Well, I really didn't have that much to do with it, but we got caught. We ended up having a 10-day Crown Court case over an incident outside a nightclub. None of this, and really it was absolutely nothing. But the police and the scallies that were involved, made it into such a big deal. We ended up in a Crown Court. We all got acquitted eventually, but it was like such a palaver for nothing. And anyway, but none of it helps, is what I'm saying. None of it helps. But yeah, I mean, there was some. It's a fantastic club and I'm so proud to say I played for it. I was just disappointed. Key moments where, I really thought I was cracking on, like the 86 double winning season, and it sort of the rug got pulled with the injury. I really thought I could. And at that point, I mean, the other thing is, in the 86 PFA All-Star 11, I'm in the All-Star 11 that season, and Kenny isn't, and Ian Rush isn't. And that just, I end up having to say this to sort of justify the fact that I was even in that team, because when someone says, name me the 86 double winning team, I'm not in it. That's, and even though if you transported us back to 1986, there was a clamour for me to be put in the England squad and reinstated. I was doing that well and things were going that well. And, and then to be, voted by the players as one of the best 3 strikers in the country with Mark Hughes and Gary Lineker. They were the 3 forwards in the PFA All-Star team. But, I find myself having to mention those things to actually justify my existence at that time, It's
crazy to think if, because I think the front 3 would have been you and Rush and Kenny behind you, right?
Well, not then. It wouldn't have been in 86. Kenny was slowly phasing himself out. He played in 86 because he had to. Mm-hmm. There was no one else. There wasn't another forward in the club who was any good, And even Kenny at 34, like playing on 75%, was as good as the next person. Much better than it. But Kenny was obviously getting older, and but he did a 10-game finish to the season and scored an amazing goal at Stamford Bridge to win the title. I mean, sometimes maybe it's just destined for certain people for them things to happen. But don't get me wrong. I grew up loving Kenny. I grew up adoring him as a player. I wouldn't say I modelled myself on him, but parts of what he did, learning from him. And all I wanted to do was please him, really. And I don't think there was anything I could do that was going to please him because, well, I don't know. I've never had this conversation with Kenny where I've sat down and, Kenny, did you actually ever think I was any good? And was it my behaviour that meant we went different ways? Or was you always going to buy different players? I've just never asked him that question because maybe I'm fine with the answer.
I mean, I've read that he thought you're a very skillful player. I mean, if Kenny says that, then it's got to be true.
I mean, my mum could have told me that, right? and there was quite a lot of evidence around to suggest I was a skillful player. But Kenny generically in his book smoozes over just things like that, being respectful, I think, rather than disrespectful. rather than going, well, he was a mouthy little fucking twat. He used to fucking fall out with me every 5 minutes. I'd rather he said that. But that's just the way it is. But I'm so proud to be able to say that. Listen, because if I take you back to when I'm 14, I'm getting rejected by every club because I'm too small. Right. So if you'd have given me my career at 14, I'd have snapped your hands off. I'd have snapped just being a professional footballer at that point. So to go on and do the things I did, but I live with some regret as well, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, 77 games and 25 goals in the league. That's not a bad return,
Yeah.
What's one of your favourite goals that you've scored for Liverpool?
Or
one that meant,
that first goal. If you can imagine, you put all these things in a pot. You're making your home debut alongside Kenny Dalglish because Ian Rush is injured, right? So I'm playing up front with some guy I've loved from a distance, right? And I'm playing for Liverpool. It's against West Ham, my old man's team. My old man's up in the stand, right? And you score in 14 seconds. I mean, it just can't get any better than that to start with. And that's still a record, I think, at Anfield, that 14-second goal. I think Keita scored one at 15 a season or so ago. It's still a record. But but anyway, it's so that one goal. But I scored a good volley against Rapid Vienna in the quarter. I don't know if it was a quarter final, I can't remember, of the European Cup, where I should have had a hat trick and missed a penalty. So Rush was the penalty taker, but I had two, and because we'd already won the game, he said, "You have it," and I missed it. So I was more, rather than living in the glory of the goals, I lived in the moment of the disappointment of the one I missed a lot of the time, But there you go. But there was some great nights, some great games. I remember the semi-final at Man United. We were playing Man United at Goodison Park in '85, and we were 2-1 down in extra time. And Kenny crosses one the back stick and Rush heads it, and Bailey just gets his hands on it and it bounces about a yard out, and I run it over the line. And that was the best atmosphere I think I've ever played a game in, because the hostility of the fans from both sides and the atmosphere was electric. And you never, I've got a picture of that goal on my phone, and because it's just people, I don't think they use it too much, but it's them hairs on the back of your neck moment. That was one of them. Actually, I got that feeling when I walked out before the game. The hostility, and there was a crowd problem back in them days, and it was vicious. But part of that, that viciousness created a real tension and an atmosphere that was great to play with.
Your dad must have been quiet on the inside.
No, he was made up, my dad. I mean, on this day, I trumped everything, his allegiances and all of that. We went on and won 3-0. And I think I made the other two as well. So it was just one of them great games. And to start with, so we got all the points. I'd made my actual debut with Kenny the week before at Norwich, and I think we drew. I think it was 3-3, and Kenny scored, and I played all right, but I just didn't score. So it's always nice to get your first goal and get out of blocks, and then there's the goals. You talk about 25. I think my record's something like 37 in 112, but I think there's a good. It depends whether you want to take the substitutes out of that. If you took the substitutes appearance and look at the games I've started, the record gets slightly better, gets a lot better, because I would say 20, 30 of them was substitute appearances. So, but it just weren't enough as far as I'm concerned, weren't enough games, but what can you do? You're not always in control of the outcome of everything, and, so eventually Kenny phoned me up and one day he said, we've accepted a bid from Tottenham. Do you want to go? And I sort of didn't, but I knew I had to. And that's the reality of football.
Steve?
Oh yeah. Hey, Paul, thanks for sharing a lot of these stories. They're so interesting, and you bring a lot of different perspectives on the stories
Honesty.
and stories that we've kind of knew about in the past, but bringing some context. But I wanted to ask you something. As somebody that has obviously you had so many injuries, right? Do you, and trying to bring it connected to the current squad where we have somebody like a Keita who never seems to be healthy for long stretches. Do you, as somebody that has gone through those type of injury, do you have sympathy for him, or is it because a lot of people are like, call him a sick note, rub some dirt on it? Where do you land on something like that?
Well, I don't know what his injury is, but it's not like he won't play with a bruise. He's obviously got something a bit more serious than that, I would think. Fans just get a bit frustrated when a player has a spate of injury. I don't know whether people felt like that about me, but it's the worst place in the world to be, not playing. I don't know if it's the worst place to be anymore, not playing, because, well, I don't know. I think if you've got professional pride and you want to be in the team, I could never see the point in being a football player and sitting on the side. I used to hate it.
Right.
I wanted to be in the middle of it, so even the injury that finished my career, right? So I've got a microfracture at the top of my right leg, on my fibula. The surgeon says, Paul, give it 3 weeks, it'll be fine, right? The manager asked the physio to ask me if I'll play after 12 days. So not wanting to be a soft shite, a little bit, not wanting to seem like I'm doing what you're talking about. I'm playing against Leicester. I'm on the pitch. I run out to close the fullback down and my whole leg collapses and I ruptured my cruciate ligaments, sheared bone off, sheared cartilage away and finished my career. Now, a medical diagnosis and all of that stuff and the physios and the player treatment is so much better. I mean, most clubs probably have their own scanning machines where they scan them straight after the game and identify what the problem is straight away so they know what they're dealing with. So they have the best of everything. We had nothing, That's my beef a little bit. We had nothing. It wasn't professional. Today it's totally professional. If I was a player today, would I risk going out, trying to play with an injury, not doing myself justice, getting hammered on social media, every form of social media, judged and analysed by the television media, about all the things I didn't do? Why would I put myself in that position if I wasn't fit, 100% fit? Because it's a very unforgiving world if you don't play well, because you're playing 95% fit rather than 100% fit. So even more so now, because the scrutiny is unbelievable. Statistics are telling you everything about a player, where he runs, how fast he runs, how many times he runs, and all of that. And so if I'm not fit, why would I put myself in that position? But then you get the flip side of it, punters going, where is he? He's always injured. He ain't, ain't this, he ain't. I don't know what his injury is. So I ain't got a clue. But sometimes some injuries are worse than others. Maybe it's been misdiagnosed. Maybe he's got something that they haven't spotted yet. I don't know. But it's easy. I think in hindsight and comparing it to my day, I'm not saying it's worse now, but there's greater consequences, not financial consequences, but consequences for reputation because of the annihilation you get through social media, analysis, criticism, and all of that. And and if you've just played with an injury for a manager and then you get all that stuff, you sort of don't. You think twice the next time, don't you? What's the benefit to me? I might as well get fit. I'm still getting paid a hell of a lot of money, and I'll play when I'm fit. Can some players hide in that little grey area you're talking about? But why would they do that? You have to work on the assumption that everybody wants to play, don't you?
Yeah, I would imagine.
You can't tell me there's players there that are taking the money and thinking, do you know what? I just sound a bit more injured for a bit longer, so I don't have to play.
No.
I just think that can't be the fact. That can't be.
Yeah, I played a whole season last year hurt, and I don't get paid anything, so I understand that a professional would want to be out there no matter what, So
Yeah.
but I just wanted that's the interesting perspective. So thanks for sharing. But I wanted to kind of segue to the the life after your playing days are over. Obviously, kind of curtailed because of the injury situation, but you ended up working at Sky Sports, being a pundit over there. Kind of share with us your experience, and was that something that, hey, when I'm done playing, this is something I want to do, or it's just kind of a natural evolution of after you retired?
No, I was totally lost when I got injured. I went into a battle over money, and compensation, and arguing about all that. It was stressful as hell. Someone offered me the chance of, did I want to be a football agent? I was riddled with financial insecurity, not being sure of the future, had no other skills outside of football. And I was angry, if I'm honest, really angry. So I had to go out being a football agent. And while I was a football agent, I was working for Eurosport, bit Radio 5, bit of BBC, bit of ITV, bit of Sky. It took 5 years before I think I got a proper job with Sky, maybe even longer than that. And I had to work hard at it. And there was a lot of competition. A lot of people want to do what, and in the end, I mean, I ended up getting a job for about 15 years at Sky, full time, where I was on a contract and I had a bit of security. And whilst I was doing that, I still did other things. And I started building. I built a house just for myself, but this is while I was playing. And then I built a few more houses. And then when I finished, I thought, I'll be a football agent, build some houses and do some TV. And that's what I've been doing ever since, until one ran out, another one kicked in, something else fell away, something else came in its place. But what it is, it's the uncertainty of not knowing whether you're going to earn £1 that week or a tenner that week or 20 quid. I'm just using them as, the analogy of the figures, but, it was that uncertainty that I hated, because in football for 20 years, I had certainty. I had a contract, and now I was in the real world of uncertainty. The only place I was comfortable was on a football pitch, and now I'm uncomfortable. And so it's hard for players after. We're not doing. We do nothing useful with our time. The modern day player, he just has a different problem. Is who to give his money to look after. Right. That's the modern day player's problem. As long as he does that, he can sit there, take his time, and the bills will always be paid until he finds what he's looking for. I remember bumping into Gareth Barry down in Spain, and Gareth had been offered a job at BT Sport, and he said, I think it was quite a good job. And he said, he went, I just don't want to do it. I went, oh, okay. I said, why is that? He said, I've just felt a bit lonely. He said, 1 minute you're in a dressing room with loads of people having a laugh and playing football and doing what you want. He said, and then you're travelling on your own all over the place in hotel rooms on my own, away from my family. So I just don't want to do it. So anyway, but you know what? I had to do that whether I liked it or not, because I had to bring a pound note in somehow. And it's that financial insecurity. The modern player doesn't have that. But what a lot of modern players can also have is too much time, boredom, and start to do other things, destructive behaviours that don't help in the long run either. Jermaine Pennant, for one. Let's use him as an example of the other extreme of Gareth Barry. Where he's lost everything, bankrupt, and really should be a wealthy young man.
Yeah, that's obviously a sad case for him to be in this situation, and still a young man though, so there's a lot of time to find the next part of his phase of his life. But so we've talked about that in the past. There's the mental aspects. I know Daz is going to ask you something about that, but preparing footballers for life after football, or those in the academy that aren't going to make it to the first team and never really establish themselves at the top flight. That the mental aspect is such a huge part of this game, it seems.
Yeah. Well, my son's been through it. My son is in America. He's lived in America on and off the last 6, 7, 8 years. And, he was a pro at Bournemouth for a couple of years. They released him. His world fell apart. He didn't know what to do. He had some tough years.
Mm-hmm.
Been going to New Orleans for several years back, trying to create a permanent situation, which he's just done. Well, I say permanent, 2 years. With the visas, it's not easy because they want an American to have that job first if they can, and then they'll look at a foreigner. So it's hard, really hard. And I've seen the struggle he had, because it never worked out. So that's a real difficult one. So it's difficult all round, because if you've had a good career, you've got used to having that career. Now it's gone. What can I do? What am I good at? What are my skills? Well, I ain't got any, I'm afraid, because they're right there. Although you have time as a player, you don't have enough time to go and really do something else properly. So you never do anything, and you don't want to. Well, in my case, I didn't want to. I liked having a game of golf. We liked going out and having an afternoon on the jolly, and all that. And that was the mentality a little bit.
Yeah,
there's so many pundit positions anyway, so with all the players that moving in and out. So Daza.
Some of those pundits though need to jog on.
Well, then we get into another world of politics and diversity and all of that, which we won't go into because it's a very divisive subject. But I've been out of Sky Sports probably 3 years, and I could see it coming. I knew what was coming, and slowly, the middle-aged sort of guy was just falling off the end of the conveyor belt, and it was changing. You could see it was changing, but Phil Thompson, Matt Lettiz, all of those that left Sky, and it all became about putting what they thought were the right ethnic mixes in, male and female mixes in, and all that stuff. But if you even mention this stuff now, you're tiptoeing around the place, waiting for a bomb to go off under your feet that you've said the wrong thing, upset the wrong thing, used the wrong terminology. But so for a 60-year-old, it's a minefield.
I mean, it should just be the most qualified for the job, shouldn't it? To be honest,
that's what it was
football
before.
Knowledge. Football knowledge.
Well, that's what it was before. But you sort of, so that's why you had Phil Thompson, Charlie Nicholas, Matt Lettiz. Now there were other qualified players out there, but then they wanted to have a bit of personality and a bit of this and a bit of that. So that's up to the producers of the show to decide who that is. But I don't think there was any discrimination in the background. But that's what it gets turned into, discrimination. Then we get into the female game. Now, I wish people would just leave it alone, leave the women's game alone on its own, and leave the men's game alone on its own. But the problem is people keep comparing it, and then they want equal pay, and then you start putting the economic argument to the situation, which is if you gave Premier League women's football what the men get, the women's game would go bust in about a week. And that's the reality of it. So it just has to, and it's great. There's no downside to women playing sport, women playing football, exercising, team sports, the whole thing, all the benefits that go with it. But, we're obsessed with equaling everything up somehow.
Before we leave, I did want to ask you about the Priory Manor Clinic, how much it helped you. It came about purely. My first sponsor in AA, he said to me, Paul, I want you to walk into a rehab centre and see if you can be useful. And I went, really? And I went, oh my God. So at this point, I just had to do. I had to do what was being suggested. So I walked into that rehab centre about 5.5 years ago, and I said, my sponsor said to walk into a rehab centre and see if I can be useful, and I thought they was going to laugh at me, and they took my number,
and I've been there 5.5 years. Well, it's just shut. They've just closed it. It wasn't making enough money, and is what I understand, and so they've closed it. So that chapter of my life was finished. But it was an amazing place for me to learn a lot, give a little bit back, give back basically. I think football's an self-obsessed, selfish world, all about you. You know, everything was always revolved around me. From the minute I was playing football at a good level, everything just revolved around me. And it was like that all the way through. You know, so this was a bit of a change in, you know, I didn't always do a lot for other people. And so that's totally changed. So I was a volunteer there for 5.5 years. And I still help people in various ways. And that's how my life's changed, without trying to bore you about all that other stuff. But it needed to change, and it needed to happen. There's a lot of people out there still struggling away in the madness.
Yeah, every day, you know, it just doesn't seem to be getting any better, does it? But that's I think why we're all involved in watching football. You know, Liverpool not playing the best football this season, you know, for a few reasons. But you know, I always say anybody that's put on that Liverpool shirt and worn that badge, you know, I've got the utmost respect for you. And Paul, I really appreciate you spending, you know, a bit of your time with us today and telling your story. Yeah,
that's no worries. I've enjoyed it. Good chat. All right, fellas. Yes, it is a bit strange how they're playing at the moment, isn't it? I mean, listen, I don't watch football, so it's not like I've got any inside knowledge. That's another thing that's happened over my time, is that, you know, I had another problem relating back to what I was talking to you about. So I was working in the lounges at Liverpool, and so people used to ask me if I was still working at Sky Sports, and I said, this is how I said it. I said, well, no, not as much. The politics have changed, the dynamics have changed. There's more women, more black faces. I said, I'm doing a bit less. And I said the same thing over 2.5 years, and one person, obviously right at the end, complained, and the club just binned me. Mm-hmm. You know, I offered to go and meet the people, talk to them, apologise to them. I didn't mean to upset them, but they didn't want to know. So I've never been back. That was the Salzburg game on the 4th of October, 19, I think. Mm-hmm. So I've not been back. So then what happened just after that, I remember standing, I was on somewhere at a game, Colchester it was, and I slowly knew the writing was on the wall at Sky, and it was finishing. And I thought to myself, what am I doing here? Colchester on a Tuesday night. I just didn't want to be there. And then lockdown happened. And you know what? Over lockdown, I just let go of football. And then football came back with no supporters, and I struggled watching it with no fans. Even though I thought the players did amazing, the standard of the football with no fans. But I just slowly drifted. And so if I'm not doing anything and a game's on and I'm really bored, I'll watch it. But other than that, I've lost touch with it and don't watch it. So it's like a grieving process, letting go of football. Because people are obsessed with it.
Yeah, they are. Also. Yeah. I'm grieving at the moment for this season.
Yeah, well,
the better times ahead anyway. But again, Paul, you know, for me and Steve, really appreciate your time, mate. And to everyone that's been listening or will listen, thank you for subscribing, for liking, and get your notification button on so you can be notified when the episodes come out. Until next time, I'll see you later.
Cheers.